Hello and welcome to Rain of Arrows Warden 02 Hero Edition. So the build is basically complete other than one significant thing that I still don't have the currency for, which is Headhunter, but otherwise the build is perfectly fine. You can see how it performs while we do this little talking intro, but overall the build is a very nice league starter. That's what I used, and it cleans tier 16 content with ease in general when it comes to like breach, legions, rituals. It doesn't do ultimatum too well, but I did try it a bit. But overall, any mechanic that has a bit of monsters on the map, it does pretty well. Now I got to level 97 and around 80-85% XP. However, level 98 is going to be imminent, and in the build guide in the PoB you will see up to level 100. Now one thing that I will mention now before we carry on, instead of a headhunter you can do inspired learning. I will mention where in the build, but usually in the northern part where the assassin is. Now, as this is going to be a beginner guide, I hopefully assume that you will watch the League Starter video and the 3-day video as well as this one to compare the notes and things. I have patched up and fixed the PoB a little bit more, and I have done all the written things inside. So when it comes to the build itself, to start the build you need 10 chaos, maybe less, and that you will get usually across the campaign and or in white maps, and I would suggest strongly for beginners to do the Chaos Orb recipe. I have a video of that in the description, and I also have that in the guide itself. So I will move this one on the side so you can see that a little bit more, and we are going to go to the actual PoB. Now everything here is written, how to craft stuff, how to do stuff, so please read my notes. I've tried to be as detailed as possible to do this thing, but I will just cover how we level, how we do things. Now, as with every build and every guide of mine, you have this little option here in the bottom left corner where you choose from acts, how you do the tree, acts to the basic end game. Now that includes skills from empty page, which is the first page, act 1 through act 10, white maps, yellow maps, and final setup, and that includes the items, empty page, act 1, 2, 3, 9, 10, 1 to 3, which is white, yellow, and red maps, and 4, which is my current gear. Now, you start leveling. Very simple. You pick up Ice Shot, you have Precision later, Dash, and Ballista, Shrapnel Ballista for your quest rewards, and then at level 12 you swap to Rain of Arrows, and you start there. Rain of Arrows, Mirage Archer, and Cold Damage. In Act 2, we add a little bit more. We add Herald of Ice so that we get extra cold damage, and then later on in Act 3 and 4, there are these things for new and for experienced players. For new players, I strongly suggest you go with triple green and 1 blue link setup, and for experienced players they will go with elemental damage with attacks with the red one without a problem. And then for everyone it is precision dash ballista for more damage with the red one, anger for fire damage aura that we can make Trinity work. Now let me explain what Trinity does in a little bit. Trinity basically takes 3 elements that we have, fire, lightning, and cold, and when we inflict damage with one element, let's say fire, it gives us resonance for other 2 elements, in this case cold and lightning. There will be this little triangle that is covered well with stuff like with a circle with the other elements that will be filled over time. That's 50 resonance total. Blue is of course cold, like white is lightning, and red is fire. So what we want to do, we want to deal damage of different elements so that we fill in that resonance, because when we fill in the resonance, we get more elemental damage per 5 of lowest. If all are max, we get max damage, and we penetrate resistances while each resonance is at least 25. This one does not stack. This one is just one. We penetrate, I think it's 16% at maximum level of 20 or 21 if you valid. That is Trinity. Trinity is very important as it boosts our damage a ton, and it gives us penetration, which also adds to damage, and you can do that easily while leveling with any elemental bow. Just upgrade your bow as you go, and you need the Anger and Herald of Ice in the beginning of the tree. Later on, you can just like follow what I've added through things, and you will get to like white maps, yellow maps, and final setup. This build does not require any expensive gems other than if you want to like increase your damage a little bit more, awaken the elemental damage with attacks. Otherwise, you do not need it. You seriously don't need it. It's a really lovely, lovely cheap build for everyone to enjoy. Now, when it comes to items and gearing up through the campaign, there are like these things that I've done here, like a write-up, which is like vendor purchase. So you purchase a bow on the vendor, from the vendor target, from Act 1, and so on. And then you want to upgrade the weapon with as much damage as possible so that we can improve the damage of the build, the capability of the build. Any damage will suffice other than chaos. Chaos does not work for our build, and physical later on will not work for our build. So we want as much elemental damage as possible on the bow, and you can upgrade this throughout the campaign. You can use different currencies, essences, alchemy orbs, orb of chance, drops from the ground, so that all can help with the build itself, so that we can gain, of course, more damage. That's what you want to do. And you just want to follow these notes that I've done here, that they will show you what you need to grab and so on. You follow these through the acts, and then at Act 10, that's the time when we need to do resistances and life. Resistances are very important. Game is balanced around having 75 to elemental resistances, each of them, and at around 0 chaos resistance, but chaos resistance is not important until you reach further on in the game. The gear is usually more expensive the more chaos resistance it has, because it's very, very sought after resistance. Now, all of these are filler. All of my PoBs have like the minimum requirements. Basically, when I craft an item, it's all in the middle, so it's all medium requirements, so nothing to worry about. If you find something with more, great. If you find something with less, sure, it's going to work. Just be careful. Do the 75 to all elemental resistances, and then you can do chaos over time. Once you get to maps, once you start grabbing some currency with the filter, that is basically, you can find that on my PoE profile. I will link it down in the description. You can download it. It's called Chaos Orb Filter. That one will show with like yellow background and red outline. It will show the items that you need for Chaos Orb recipe. I also have the video linked in the notes section here, and also in the description it will be there. And once you grab that, you can just upgrade over and over. Just look through these things and just upgrade as you go. This is a wonderful starter build because it pushes you to upgrade things as you go. You see the modifier, you have 20 resistance, now you have 30, now you have 40, and so on. That's what you need to do. Now, my current gear is basically the end game gear. There is nothing too much that is going to be changed, other than in going through these things, you're just going to buy more unique items. Other than that, there's nothing else that is needed, and for some special items, I will have them in the notes. Now, let's go there and let's cover through items. So let's go to notes. So we have crafting. So for the first time in my POBs and my guide videos, I will include how to craft gear, because this is going to help you to learn how to do different things at different stages of the game and how you can improve. Of course, this is optional. If you want to skip this, there will be timestamps, of course, skip this part, but this is for people who want to learn more about how to make items and how to craft them. What we need first is we need an item that has a fractured mod. What is a fractured mod? A fractured mod is the mod that is here, like in this golden-ish color, that cannot be changed, removed, or meddled with in any other way. You can increase it if it's on a ring, as an example. You can increase the resistances you get from it, but if it's on a normal item, it cannot be meddled and tampered with. These items are generally items that are a little bit more expensive in the game, but they help you when you craft items which have up to 3 prefixes and up to 3 suffixes. For the sake of this build, we need 1, 2, 3, and 4 items that are rare, that have chaos resistance as the fractured suffix modifier. And how do we craft? I'll just explain one in this guide so that we don't make it too long. But for helmet, we need to hit the essence that I have written up here, so deafening essence of spite. We need to hit the essence of spite until we get tier 3 or higher resistance as a 3rd suffix. As you can see here, when I press Alt, we have chaos resistance tier 1, essence to intelligence, and tier 3 to lightning resistance of the maelstrom. Then we can use greater eldritch embers to apply a searing exarch implicit. Now, what are these embers? You get them later on in the stage of the game. You have ichors, you have embers, you have this one. So we need lesser eldritch ichor, lesser eldritch ember, greater ember, and chaos eldritch chaos orb for crafting. Now these apply implicits. Implicits are modifiers that are above this yellow line on top of the item, and they, when you press Alt, you can see what they are. You can see the different things. I will also link that in the description. I will link the videos about Searing Exarch and Eater of Worlds videos, so you can watch that as well. But for the sake of simplicity here, we are going to be using 1 greater eldritch ember. You can use a lesser too, it will work. But do not use an ichor. Just use an ember on an item that is not influenced. Use that one and then hit it with Eldritch Chaos Orb until you get decent life and evasion. So you then right click it into the item. This says Eldritch Chaos Orb. If the Searing Exarch is dominant, reroll prefix modifiers. If the Eater of Worlds is dominant, reroll suffix modifiers. What does dominant mean? That means higher tier of modifier. Lesser is the lowest tier. Greater is 1 tier higher. Then we have Grand, which is 1 tier higher. Then we have Exceptional. So we have those tiers up. If an item does not have an influence on it, if you just apply lesser, it counts lesser as 1 and Eater as 0, because only Searing and Eater can be applied at the same time on an item. That's why this works with only lesser, but you can do greater. And then Eldritch Chaos Orb to reroll prefixes. Now, if you already got that from essences, which means if you already got good evasion and life, and there's room to craft a prefix, you can craft any life or evasion as you'd like. After that, we use lesser Eldritch Ember to get an implicit modifier reduced mana cost of attacks, and lesser Eldritch Ichor to get increased mana reservation efficiency. So an item should look something like this. You can also see all of these items in the PoB. Everything is listed in the item section. So that's basically for crafting. That's what you do, and all of these are covered. This is all there. You can read it up. That's perfectly fine. Now let's go to items. Items are very important. For the items, we have Honor Valley Ivory Bow. Name does not matter. What does it have? It has 3 elemental resistances, fire, cold, and lightning resistances, and 3 crafted modifiers, which is attack speed, critical strike chance with strength and intelligence. This is basically our BIS. This bow was 12 divines and 1.5 divine to 6 link it, and this we basically won't ever change. We don't need extra projectiles. You can find one with critical strike multiplier, but it is absolutely not needed. So overall, this is one of the best things that we can do. It has 1200 elemental DPS, which is perfectly fine. And yeah, that's it. With high elemental damage, with some crit, with attack speed, a great bow whatsoever. Now for our Quiver, there's also Quiver crafting section in the notes. There is a video also linked. I will link it in the description below. Nothing to worry about. To craft the Quiver, we use essences. Follow the notes, please. Helmet, we've just explained. Helmet crafting with essences, that's it. Body armor. Body armor follows the same rule. We buy chaos resistance, we hit it with an essence, we get good prefixes, and that's basically body armor. Please follow the notes. For gloves, we get shadows and dust with +1 to maximum frenzy charges, bonus points if you get maximum global crit strike multi. Now, what do shadows and dust do? They give us rampage. The unholy might is not important. Unholy might makes our makes our physical damage into chaos damage, but rampage is important. What does rampage do? Rampage creates those explosions that we have that clear the map as well, and per 20 rampage, we get increased damage. It stacks up to 1000, so you want to stack it up to get as much damage as possible, and that's where we gain a little bit of extra oomph in the build. Very good item. I dare say it would be this, but yes, and we get +1 to maximum frenzy charges, just so that we can get a little bit more of attack speed, movement speed, and damage in general. Boots follow my Ailment Avoidance guide to make boots, so please watch that one. It will be linked everywhere. The only thing that we need is chance to spell suppress. We need at least 5%, because that's what we lack when we add additional Ascendancy. When it comes to Amulet, Amulet is High Risk Truth, bonus points if you get Grace has increased aura effect for more defenses, and Divine Judgment for 50% increased elemental damage. Ring 1 and 2 are Tamings. Tamings you can obtain in two ways. One, you can buy them from players, now they're pretty cheap, and two, you can create your own by using Barrick's Grip, Respite, and Barrick's Grip Pass and Respite. You can use that one to create the taming. You can vendor them and create the taming. And then we are using let me show you how it looks. We're using the Turbulent Catalyst to increase elemental damage on taming rings. Belt is Prism Weave. It's like 1 to 10 chaos belt if you have Anger and Grace with increased aura effect. If not, it's completely fine until Headhunter. This is the belt until Headhunter. In regards to cluster jewels you will change later. There's no need to change cluster jewels pre-level 94, 95, so you can keep your Lioneye's Fall jewel in the socket. Lioneye's Fall is the jewel that changes these modifiers here to bow, so melee and melee weapon type modifiers are transformed to bow modifiers, so that's what it changes. You do not need to change that one until later on in the game, level 94, 5, 6. That's absolutely fine. Then when you change to large cluster jewels, this is what you need. You need a large cluster jewel with 3 passives, which needs Drive the Destruction, which needs Feed the Fury and Martial Prowess, which are going to be down here. So Martial Prowess and Feed the Fury. The third one, you can get whatever you want. It doesn't matter, just get the lowest pointer one. For medium cluster jewels, both are fine. Eye to Eye and Repeater on 10% increased projectile damage, and that is because Rain of Arrows is a close range thing. Eye to Eye says projectiles deal increased damage with hits against nearby enemies. These stack with point blank as well, so we deal more damage the closer the targets are to us. Now, another thing is Stormshroud. This follows the boots, so follow my Ailment guide. And we have a regular jewel with 5% increased max life and corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. You can buy any jewel with life and corrupted blood. They can be up to a divine or 2. That's absolutely fine. You can craft your own. Good luck. It took me a lot of tries and I still failed. Now, when it comes to Lethal Pride is a jewel that we use to get strength out of, but it can give us great modifiers on passive notables. Notables are these with notches on them, so it can give us like fortification that we don't use, chance to deal double damage, which is great, attack damage leaches life, which is great, reduce damage from crit strikes, and so on. The best one would be double damage as much as possible, some attack leech, and intimidate. Intimidate makes an enemy take 10% more 10% more attack damage, which means we deal 10% more damage. I've also sorted these out, how much they cost and stuff, so nothing to worry about. If you don't want to spend currency, buy the cheapest one. It doesn't matter what it has. Absolutely does not matter. We use it for strength stack as we need strength in the build. Now, the last but not least is Ascendancies. I will cover Ascendancies now, as we need Forbidden Flesh and Forbidden Flame with Mother's Teachings, also included in the PoB in the notes, and that gives us Barkskin. Now, what does Barkskin do? Barkskin gives us a buff, a stacking buff, 1 to 10 stacks, that with more stacks, we gain more physical damage reduction, sort of. We annul, basically we remove 30 damage per stack of any physical hit. So at 10 stacks, we remove 300 damage of a physical hit. So if something hits us for 1000 damage, it will actually hit us for 700. Then it drops down to 9 stacks. And then when it drops down in stacks, for every stack that it drops, 9, 8, 7 to 1, we get plus 2% to dodge, to attack dodge, to clean evade chance dodge. That's what we have. So if we go and put Barkskin in config, if we put Barkskin at 10 stacks, we get more physical max hit, and the more we lower it, the less hit we can take, but then we get more evasion chance, of course. Evasion max out at 95. Now, that's a really good defensive, but let's talk about offense. Offense, we have Oath of Summer, hits that would ignite instead Scorch, and you can inflict additional Scorch. We can inflict 2 Scorches. What do Scorches do? They shred elemental resistances, all of them per attack, per hit. Very simple. And we can shred up to 30% per stack, so up to 60% per 2 stacks. Then we have Oath of Winter, which means we can freeze enemies, and we can freeze them for longer if we fail to freeze them. If we fail to freeze them, we collect Hoarfrost stacks, which then will stack up, and then when we freeze them for at least 2 seconds. Very good defensive. Next one, Oath of Spring. Maximum effective shock is 2% increased damage taken, and you can apply up to 50 shocks. Basically, we can do up to 100% more damage for the time and duration of ailments for shock, which is base 2 seconds, and we can give ourselves evasion elemental ailment duration 1, 2, 3, 30% longer time to do so. We will hit 100% all the time, so don't you worry about that. Storm Rain got you covered. And we have Avatar of the Wilds, which gives us Unbound Avatar skill. We get a stacking buff, which stacks up to 100 whenever we inflict an elemental ailment on an enemy. And once we activate it at 100 stacks, we always inflict freeze, shock, and ignite when unbound, and we deal 80% more elemental damage, which is amazing. Now, how do we manage to hit that many times? We have a regular setup for 6 link, and we have a Mirage Archer that's firing more arrows, and we have a Manaforged Arrows setup. What is Manaforged Arrows? When we spend mana or life on bow skill, we basically have it with this should be a life tap. Oops. So we basically have it proc other skills that are connected to it. In our case, it's Blast Rain and Storm Rain. So both Blast Rain and Storm Rain look like this. So this one is like black instead of like it should be red, and the Storm Rain are these like lightning conduits on the ground. Now, when we shoot more, there are up to 100 of these that can be planted. So up to 100 hits that we can do when they are planted, and we proc them all the time. You can see that here when we do this. You can see how many we proc. So we proc basically every half a second. We proc Blast Rain and Storm Rain. That is because we have them connected to Life Tap, and we are also spending life to cast our Rain of Arrows. So when we spend the life there, we have life mastery, skills cost life instead of 15% of mana cost. When we spend life, we trigger life tap on the Manaforged Arrows and it procs immediately, and we have the consistent uptime. It doesn't work with inspiration only. The reason why I added inspiration later was because of the extra crit that we can do and like a little bit less of mana cost, but elemental damage and increased crit, which is amazing for this build. Now, as you've seen what it does, that's also great. There are some defensive concerns. Now, these defensive concerns come from evasion. Evasion is very tricky as it is evade and attack. Now, when we evade an attack, the more evasion we have, the more chance we have to evade. But as we are playing an archer build, we are usually considered paper and glass cannon. So if you are dying, that means you most likely have less evasion than needed, than maybe I do. I have around 30k evasion without the Flask. With the Flask, it's around 43k. That's perfectly fine. Around 30,000 evasion feels comfortable. Now, when we freeze things, you won't feel it that much, but if enemies approach you, you will feel it. You need around 3,500 life or more with evasion there. How do we get evasion? Check the notes for crafting items. Now, when it comes to spell suppression basically cuts any spell damage we get by half. So usually Path of Exile is a game that has spells that hit around 6,000 damage. So when we do spell suppression 100%, we are going to survive with like 3, 4, 500 health if we have 3,600. We can also add additional defense layer, which can be cast when damage taken. So when we take enough damage, that procs the linked ability, and steel skin for a little bit more of armor, but that's more used as a bleed removal. And last but not least, well, one of the last things is flasks. Now, flasks are not bis here. The bis flasks would be, I will mention, but what you need here, the bis flask is the one that I have. Well, one of. You need an instant life flask with immunity to bleeding whenever you use it, so whatever it is. This one is panicked, which means that 50% life or lower, it is instant. It's a very good flask. It's a bis flask. Now we need a Jade flask with evasion rating and increased evasion rating during effect with a prefix chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike. That helps regain the charges, which we are gaining basically immediately, and that gives us a lot of evasion. Quartz flask is our phasing flask, which we have chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a crit strike, and unfortunately not this one. What you can do is you can add movement speed on this one, curse reduction and such, whatever you would like. I just took one, so I wanted phasing and a good refresh for flask charges. We have a diamond flask. This would be chance to gain a flask charge and also critical extra crits when we have, so more crits so that we can proc our crit. Our crit currently is 71. With that flask it is 79. It would go above 80 when we have it fully crafted, so you want critical strikes with it. And Quicksilver flask, we have chance to gain flask charge, and this is attack damage, leeches life. This is just a bonus. And the last part, which is really forgotten, Soul of Solaris and Soul of Aberrath for Major and Minor God. So that's our Pantheon. What we want to do is we want to do Solaris. Why? Because we want physical damage reduction when there is only one nearby enemy, but not important as 20% chance to take 50% less area damage from hits. So we have 20% chance to basically half the area damage. Area damage does not go through spell suppression. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's really iffy with Path of Exile. It's really good to have. Next one, 8% reduced elemental damage taken if you haven't been hit recently. As we are an evade build, we don't get hit that often. So this is very good as it reduces elemental damage. This can also be like a spell that we can hit, so it can reduce the 8% damage from the spell too. Next, take no extra damage from crit strikes if you have taken a crit strike recently. Recently refers to the last 4 seconds. So if we take a crit, we won't be able to be crit again for 4 seconds. Thankfully, we have sort of crit immunity from our Mark Mastery, but this also helps. And we have 50% chance to avoid ailments from critical strikes. We are elemental ailments immune on this build, but there's one caveat. Poison and bleed can crit. Well, bleed. Poison and physical can crit, and they can apply the bleeding and poison from crit, which can do a very bad thing to our health. And the last one is Soul of Aberoth. If you are doing Searing Exarch, this one will basically annul most of the modifiers on Searing Exarch, so you don't have to worry about any fire on the ground. And instead of Aberoth, it is very good to use Soul of Reslatha to gain life charges, and enemies you hit recently have reduced life regeneration rate. Recently is still past 4 seconds. Now, I hope that I've explained things thoroughly. I'm sorry it has been a very long video, but I wanted to bring this to beginners, to absolute beginners too. Please do watch my other videos for this build, as this will be included with those previous ones, and this is a full-blown guide. Now I will make more builds in due time in regards to Settlers League, but it has been a fun experience. Please do read my notes. I want to thank you all for the support and for stopping by the streams and YouTube videos, for commenting, for liking the videos. Thank you so much. I am really appreciative of it. If you like this video, do give it a like, sub if you don't mind, comment if you have any ideas, thoughts, and opinions to add. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video or stream. Have a good one.